Hey, welcome to the Nerdatorium. We're talking about Tintin. Hi Jishnu, hi Tejas, tell me about
Oh
Tintin.
my god.
How's it going, Dinkar?
It's the greatest.
Hi Seth, tell me about Tintin.
I started
Okay.
saying. I told you. It's the greatest. Bus. Good app.
No. Wait, there's so much more to be said about Tintin that is unsaid today because
What?
now these days talking about Tintin is kind of dicey because it's important that we grew up with these comics, but it's also important to address that some of the things that are in the comics aren't as cool as we may have thought it was. Actually, it was never cool, but we just didn't know any better. But before we get into those things, let's talk about the things that we love about Tintin and what makes him an amazing character and something that has kind of come to define the comic book reading of our childhood. Jishnu, go.
I think
He pointed at me. He claims to be a newspaper reporter. He's the worst reporter in the world because he just goes and does it himself. So he doesn't report
I remember
anything.
at least
So
two distinct moments where he actually got a story printed. At least twice.
But there's nothing for him to report when he's the one that does it, because then his report in the newspaper is his deposition in court.
No.
That's true.
Jishnu, let me clarify. He is like a Lois Lane kind of character where he inserts himself into the story.
No, that's fine.
That's the
but,
important
That's
but
not
see,
good journalism.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I
not
know,
right.
you're right.
And Lois Lane might insert herself in the story, but then Superman is the one that actually does the things. She helps him get there. But Tintin does.
That's not
Tintin
true.
does all of the above.
That's not true anymore. Let me put it
Yeah,
that
but we're
way,
talking
okay?
about 1940s when Tintin was written. Or 50s.
1930s, if we think about like Tintin in America,
Something
the
like
Roaring Twenties, even Al Capone. Do you remember that story where he goes to Chicago and then has a short shenanigan with a bunch of Native Americans, which is now weird to kind of think about.
Yes.
That's exactly
Alright.
what we're saying the issue is with Tintin.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes, this is
of
true.
course, I suppose we're saying that the first issue is that he's not a good journalist, which is, well, okay, I guess we live with that. But also, the stereotypes
Okay.
in those books have not aged well. In fact,
They
they
have not
shouldn't
aged
have
well.
ever existed.
No.
But I think,
Yeah,
like you were
they
saying,
haven't
Tejas,
aged-
we didn't know what was going on back then. Like, you just read them and go like, okay, sure, I guess that's what those, like,
Yeah, you're
I guess
right.
that's what this is. Yeah. Never-
And that you kind of imagine that's what the world was like at that time because you have no point of reference. You're not old enough to kind of question all of the things that immediately, and that becomes your impression of the world. I was watching this thing. I think somebody shared a screenshot from a WB cartoon. I think it may have been an old Looney Tunes cartoon or something like that, where prior to the cartoon that they were airing, they put up a disclaimer saying, "Hey, listen." We know that there are a lot of things that are inappropriate about this cartoon, and instead of editing it out, we just want to acknowledge that this is what our company used to do. This is what it used to kind of believe that it was okay to get away with, and we want to acknowledge it rather than just brushing it away and saying that it was never part of our history. So I think that was like a really cool way of kind of saying that, okay, cool, we acknowledge the errors of the past creators involved in our projects. But to remove it is to kind of do it an even greater disservice. So I think I don't think it's wrong to kind of to not enjoy Tintin anymore, or Tintin is cancelled or whatever.
Oh, hell no.
Because Tintin still brought a lot of joy
Hell
to,
yes.
to so many people's hearts, and it still does in many ways. Yes, of course, a lot of it is kind of has not aged well, like you said. But man, some of the characters are the best characters we've ever seen in popular culture, like Captain Haddock and Sir the Professor Calculus, the twins, Thompson twins. So many amazing well-written.
There's
characters
something to
and,
be said for the flip side of
yeah.
the fact that even though you're right that there is a lot of stereotyping and a lot of not so kosher racist things going on in there, you have to give them credit for being so on the ball with being as diverse as they are. Even if they're not accurate in their depiction, the fact that out of whatever 40 or 50 odd comics that they had, maybe
Yeah.
20, 25 countries were represented in that thing. Like, he goes around, man, and like that's
Yeah, he's a
he's a globe-trotting guy, and like
investigative
they might not be
journalist.
as accurate as they should be, but at least they tried to like break out of a bubble and sort of expose you to something
yeah, it's
to
got
do
a
with.
bit of a James Bond vibe.
Very
to
very
it,
much so. Very much so. It's like you got to give him props for like trying at least. Like it might.
I would say you given the opposite of props to that. Like, if you don't know what is outside your bubble, then just write about your bubble and don't try and write about countries that you don't know about.
Well, I mean, it's not.
that's
It wasn't
the problem,
all
right? If he only
racist.
stuck
Like, not
to talking
not
about
every
Europe and Belgium or whatever,
True.
we'd be fine.
No, fair.
But he went out and did some like pretty racist shit.
He did.
So
He
that's
did.
not cool.
But I mean, the thing is, like, it's
Well,
not all bad.
yeah.
Not every single page of every book that was outside of France and Belgium was racist. You know what I mean? So like, there are definitely glaring errors in it, but it's not to say that the entire story is horrible. That's the reason why we're bigging him up. Like, he had some dark times, but it wasn't the entire story. You know, it's like it was maybe
Which is a different
50%.
point, and there I agree. I think like the saving grace for Tintin right now is the fact that a lot of the time the people that he deals with in other countries are not key players in the story. So
Like I said,
so there's not enough
he's
room
not reporting
for him to be
because
completely
he's a
racist.
shitty reporter, so he's not telling you what the country's like. He's just like he's
know
like
why we're giving-
I just assume the country is a
One
piece of
second.
shit. I'm just gonna go do it
I
myself.
refuse. I'm sorry, wait. I refute the idea that Tintin is a bad guy. Tintin is a,
He's not
is
a bad guy.
perfectly fine
He's
guy.
not a bad guy at all.
Tintin
Yeah.
is fine.
Nobody said Tintin's
yes,
a bad
obviously.
guy.
It's Ergi.
We
That's
just said
what
he's a
we're
bad
just,
reporter,
we're
which
just
is fine.
crapping on Tintin when all he was is doing his job, and when Hergé, the author
He was
of the
not
book,
doing his job.
René Georges, was obviously kind of a racist, and but Tintin, as you know, and his friends, what they stand for is what's the important part for me. At least the things that I take away from it is that he loves his friends, he takes care of them. Like there's that awesome kind of issue about Tintin in Tibet. I remember when he kind of travels half the world to go and save his friend. So like those are the at least the values that they kind of try to write about in those books are the ones that stay with me. I like Tintin for those reasons, and the fact that he's got like a bunch of really really funny friends to kind of go off on an adventure. Those are the things that obviously kind of.
He
stick
also
with
taught me
apart
that
from the artwork.
when in doubt, if you don't have a gun, you can always use the good old stick 'em up and just put your finger behind somebody's back, and they'll just always assume that you have a gun, and then you can just pick up the gun that
Right,
they
the
dropped.
man single-handedly took down Al Capone. Single-hand and one.
You know
paw
that
with
finger
Snowy.
gun moment?
He always has
That
it.
finger gun moment isn't actually in the Tintin comics. It's only in the animated show.
Really?
In the
In the
comics,
animated
Oh my
show.
God.
he actually has a gun in that moment.
Really? Because I swear he's done that like
Yeah.
several times. He's done that in Tintin America. He's done that in Destination Moon. I think he's done it in Prisoners of the Sun. He like that.
No.
That's like in his back because it's a free move, right? You don't need anything to do that. That's the beauty of the move. It's just like, look,
Love
I got
it.
nothing on this guy. He has a gun. As long as I can get behind him, I can get him. I just have to get behind
I
him.
believe
I can't take
that
him
never
out.
actually happened in the comics, though. It's like a elementary my dear Watson kind of situation.
Sure,
Correct.
it's an
I
embarrassment.
do wanna suggest perhaps that maybe if you aren't, after watching this, for some reason you haven't read Tintin, and if you haven't, maybe the better way to get into it is the cartoon series, because it was done by a Canadian company, and like Tintin has a very Canadian accent.
Oh, yeah.
And they cut out all the slightly inappropriate bits. And they keep the good stuff, and it's got an amazing score. It's got great animation.
yeah.
It's got the best part about all the books, like wrapped into 22-minute episodes, sometimes two-parters. So, what do you say, Dinkar, Jishnu? Do you think the cartoons are a better, like the evolved version of the
Yeah.
thing, and maybe even the movie is one step ahead of that?
I don't think the movie's one step
Possibly.
ahead. I think the show is my favorite. I'd watch the show over the movie. I really enjoy the show, the cartoon.
All right. So, guys, quickly rattle off what are your favorite Tintin comics, and we'll close this one off asking people theirs in the comments. Just
Dibs on the Moon's books.
the moon, so Destination Moon and Explorers on the
Yup.
Moon. Cool. You get to pick two parts. All right, cool. So, Dinkar, go.
I'll also pick a two-parter then. Secret of the Unicorn and Red Rackham's Treasure.
Oh man, that was gonna be my pick. I'll go with a single issue. I want to pick King Ottokar's Scepter, which is in the fictional kingdom of Sildavia, so that no one kind of gets offended. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It was pretty racist against Sildavians as well, I will say.
Yeah. No.
I mean, it can't be
was he?
racist if you don't know what they're basing it on.
Well, I mean, there have
Can it just
obviously
mean
taken
George
stereotypes from
Remy
It's just
different
was
neighboring
not
countries.
racist. Like the only country he wasn't racist again was a country that didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. You can't
Yeah.
be racist because
No,
racist
so-
means you're not accurate. If it doesn't exist, you can't be
Let
inaccurate.
I don't agree with that completely, but let me put it this way. Sildavia was a made-up nation. He's got some lovely adventures there where he has to go return the scepter. But isn't Sildavia also the moon base, where the moon base is? If I'm not mistaken? I think so.
No.
I
Was it? I don't
Yeah, it
remember.
is.
It might be.
Yeah, isn't it?
Maybe.
I think it is. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to check up on that. But Sildavia, cool. I love King Artigas' scepter. And
Check it out.
I would love to pick a Blue Lotus, but again, lots of racist stuff in that. But
Lots
still
of
a great
drugs,
adventure
too.
overall. Lots of drugs, lots of opium, man. Opium was the choice drug of the day. Anyway, so that's our episode, I guess, on Tintin. Tell us what you guys think in the comments, or what your favorite Tintin comic is, and maybe tell us whether you still enjoy it, whether you prefer the cartoon over the comic book now. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode, you nerds.